They usually
And it's
roof.
comfortable.
You'll like that roof.
Right,
It's
probably more
yeah,
comfortable
it's
than a
what I call
Cadillac.
a metropolitan roof. It's not your conventional gable.
How come in to wind up here?
He married. His wife is her dad.
Yeah, I think so.
He lived here.
Oh, okay.
There you go. There you go.
Jerry Paulson was her dad. And they've had those lots for
Of course, we're gonna have a problem with public officials borrowing it over the weekend.
Everybody was saying that Holly, when it came and made his presentation about having a lot right on the water there, finally got EPA approval. So they're getting started.
Yes, I saw that. They did. Good morning. Let's call the meeting to order. Today is Tuesday, it's March 27th. We're here at the Civic Center for our regular monthly meeting. If we stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you. Pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Clerk, call the roll, please.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Here.
Ms. Albrecht?
Here.
Mayor Kathy?
Here.
Mr. Wallace?
Here.
Mr. Putnam?
Thank you. I don't have anything. Council members, Brett, Jerry? No. Linda, you have any?
No, an update. I mentioned last week about the walking bridge, and I did bring it up to CDC. And the consensus was, as much as they think that it would be nice, there are other priorities. And so I think I'm probably the only one that thinks this would be a fantastic idea. So let's put it on the back burner. Unless the council wants to
Just
go
don't move it all the way to the
No,
back. Let's-
okay.
I like the idea.
They talked
I don't
about-
like the price tag.
Yeah, I know, but they talked about filling in the moat.
Oh,
So,
that woke me up.
Hey, make them on the committee.
so,
Yeah, well, I'd be great to turn that over to them. Speaking of that, Jeff, if we wanted, and I'm gonna use this word, seriously consider, I know that you've done some homework, I've been to some meetings with you, but is that what would you suggest for a plan of action? I don't mean this morning, but think about how we would proceed if we wanted to fight the powers that be, if that's the right term, even though I know we both have been discouraged, I think, by what they're asking. But we were trying to do it on the sly, so to speak. We weren't getting, when I say sly, we weren't paying you. I don't know that we talked to everyone that we maybe needed to talk to.
Right. I'd say for a way forward, let us put together an estimated cost for how much volume we actually want to fill, and then also kind of back into what the permitting cost might be for that, and then also what the mitigation cost might be. So at least the city would then have an idea of, are we looking at a $500,000 project, $150,000 project, or exactly what are we looking at?
Did you determine that there was mitigation required, or was that just talk? I know at the meeting I went to, it was hinted.
I would assume that there's mitigation that's going to be required. The area for mitigation, that's what the negotiation would really be about. How far up that slope the wetland species go, how far into the water, what the actual impacts are.
Could you put us together something?
Sure, yes, we could.
Because in the end, that's the best bang for the buck.
right.
Is to get it filled in.
Oh,
I
absolutely.
mean, I get in
Absolutely.
a portion of that.
Right.
Nobody getting a call.
Uh-huh.
Peggy turned it on.
Not mine.
So we're gonna have to pay the government to get a permit to fill our own property.
Yes. Waters of the state.
That's the waters of the state,
Waters of the state.
which were actually man-made by local people,
Yes,
federal government.
yes. It was dug years ago, and I provided those pictures to them, showing them that, if you remember, Jeff.
Correct.
I took them those aerials that I have showing when it wasn't there and when it was there.
Right.
And I was hoping that, I think in the end, that proved to be more detrimental than helpful. I wish I'd have kept it, but I don't know that.
I don't think that hurts at all.
Yes, I had, yes.
Do I?
No, stand up there.
I attended the CDC meeting last week, and Clay Studstill said that I thought he said he had talked to you, Al, but he said that regarding filling that in, that there really was no reason it shouldn't have been done, and he found off some legal jargon, so maybe he has some ideas on it. Because he
I have not talked to Clayton, but he was on my list to ask. He does a lot of that.
Well, he had some ideas that he thought it was perfectly fine, perfectly legal, and not that hard to do, so you might want to talk to him.
He did say that.
We'll look him up in a few minutes.
Okay, yeah, we'll turn every card we can because it got pretty expensive the last time, Jeff, and I mean, I could sense the calculator running in the meeting you and I went to.
Correct.
I could sense that. Even though there was no number out there, it was,
And if Clayton can do that, we might hire him. Do it easy.
there you go. All right, well, let's look at that. You know him?
I do not.
Okay, I'm gonna talk to him and then I'm gonna report to you what he tells me.
Okay.
Okay. Citizens' comments. Please.
Peggy Wood, Deerfoot Inn on Mexico Beach. On the fire assessment, all of my lots are listed separately, and so we're one business, but I'm charged per lot. And so I think $10,000 for one business is a little much, and I would appreciate if you'd look at it and maybe consider how you would charge one business rather than charging for each separate one. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments on that? I think that's something we gotta look at. On how you can, there's one business and they have 5 lots and they're all one business. And that, how do we do it now?
No.
We do it by the lot, not by the business.
It's per building.
Per building. So if somebody that's got 6 buildings, they're gonna pay more than somebody that's got maybe twice that much square footage, but only on one lot.
That's the case law requirements for commercial.
Case law,
Case law.
That's what Sandy said, that's what we hired her, yeah, she's the one that addressed the legal and ethical when we asked her about that, Adrian and I, and her reasoning was, whether we agree or not, it didn't matter, she said you cannot do it that way, it's not legal.
That's why there's a cap on square footage.
And that's what she's telling us, so.
Yeah, but each lot of a business doesn't always meet the cap, so therefore, the business doesn't get capped, you end up with,
You're capping the building.
you're capping the building, not the lot. So, I mean, that's, and there's several of those.
Is she still under, in essence, contract with us?
Yeah, we can talk to her, we have numerous times on this subject, and she's.
I wonder if she could,
If
you know,
you're doing it, you're not doing it the legal way, is what she's telling us.
would we want a letter from her explaining it, or her here? I don't know, but I think that needs to be addressed in front of us.
why can't she send you an email or something to that
I'm sure
effect?
she will, I mean, it's been addressed before.
I'm sure she has already, but
Oh,
Well, how about the logical way instead of the legal way?
well, that doesn't always
Well-
make sense either way,
I don't know how we
dealing with
can,
ISO.
I mean, if we have a law, don't we have to follow it? I mean,
Depends on how many.
Basically,
I always refer to, speed limit says 35, we don't give a ticket for going 37, so, I mean, there's gotta be some way
Should
to
a
have
duplex,
we gotta realize the ramifications of what we're asking here.
should a duplex pay twice or once?
Is it owned by one person or owned by two?
One.
I asked that question too, because we have a duplex, and, you know, when you get the bill and it's 500, I said, wow, wait a minute, but, you know, that's the way it was.
But this is the same scenario
Well,
as a duplex is.
I
Same
just
scenario.
think, I think we have to ask those kind of questions and get, other than just some standard stamped answer. There's gotta, I'd like to talk to her. Where does she come from? Tallahassee?
We can have her come again, I
So-
don't remember what the fee is, but
Well, I'd like
this was
for,
addressed in a meeting with her.
I'd like for it to address all of us. and
I don't
just
recall
instead of
that
us.
being addressed. I don't recall what Ms. Wood just said being addressed.
She
Is-
spoke at length about how we cap all buildings and each building is gonna be charged separately, and that the reason that each building is capped is because of our fire protection, but if there's multiple buildings, each one has that cap.
Still may request that she come and talk to us again. I think some of these things past, we heard, we thought we understood, but because of the complexity, it may have escaped what we were thinking. So personally, I'd like to see this and other questions, maybe they come up, that we compile some questions before we go into our planning for next year's budget, when we have to look at this again and have to clarify these items for all of us so we can speak, and for our, you know, businesses and citizens. I'd like to see her back and talk on some of these things.
Why don't we do this? Just a suggestion. Why don't you get something in writing from her?
Yes, sir.
Send it out. Let us look at it.
Right.
Give us something so that when she gets here, we're not just shooting from the hip, that we understand that we have something to read that says this is why we voted for this. Then compile some questions and either do it at a meeting or do it through mail or Danny but I'd like to see I'd like to see the statute or the law or whatever it is and have a chance to see how that's,
We'll send her an email, and then I'll forward her response to all of you guys, and then if
You
want
understand-
all your questions from there,
Yeah,
I'll forward
right.
back to her. And then before we pay her $2,000 to come here again, it'd be much easier to do it via email correspondence, so.
It's $2,000.
we
each.
don't,
What was it? It was expensive. When she came to these meetings, it was costly. So to travel here, it cost some real money for her to come here.
Well, I think we need to be very conscious of what the legal aspect is, because if we don't follow the legal aspects, as corny as they may seem, then we're opening ourselves up for lawsuits from everybody else.
And that's why we hired her. That's correct.
But,
But we still need to understand.
no,
this.
I think we need an
I'll start with the
explanation.
email, I'll forward her
Start with
response to you
email.
guys. You guys can reply back with questions, and I'll forward that to her.
now is that like an attorney? They
No,
they
this
charge
should
us
be-
for the email?
This should be included, I believe.
I think we need to do it right away too, real quick.
I
mean-
don't know, but I guess I wanna know, what's our question?
Well, my question is exactly what Ms. Wood just said.
So if she owns 3 rentals over here in the Driftwood, all under the Driftwood Compass, she should pay for one business? When she says 10,000, that's all of her rental businesses, that's all of her rental homes, and that's her hotel. That's not the hotel alone. So it's all one business, but it's multiple things. So is our question, if I incorporate and have multiple property all over town under one business umbrella, should I pay for one, or?
I don't think that's all over town.
But the Driftwood building is charged, and then each
Once.
of the ground buildings are charged separately, and each of the houses across the
Charged
street.
separately.
are
Each
charged.
house is
But
separate.
that's one business.
So that's what she's saying, is it's one business, but it's not. They're houses across the street, they're rental properties.
Well,
That's my question, is what is our
all right,
question?
Peggy, would you mind us using your property as an example in the question going to her?
No, go ahead.
Okay, I think that might be the easiest way, if she doesn't mind.
I can understand if you charge for the Driftwood and then charge for the house, you know, the little buildings down on 30th Street as separate, but that's one lump sum there.
But not the rental houses across the street, that should be Driftwood, correct?
It's all one under the Driftwood business.
Is that okay?
Yeah, I think I got my question.
Okay. Other citizens' comments? All right, we have the minutes from under the consent agenda for March 13th. Do I have a motion to accept?
So
So
moved.
Have a motion second? Is there any additions, corrections? Any opposition? Let the record reflect, motion passed 5-0. Jeff, you're up.
Good morning, Jeff Britton with Dewberry. Not much to talk about today. Beach renourishment project. You should see our survey crews out on the beach starting this afternoon. They're going to get with Philip tomorrow and try to set a tidal gauge, or help them set a tidal gauge down by the canal. 23rd Street, 33rd Street CCCL permits have been resubmitted. Canal Parkway extension should go in this week. Other than that, I don't have anything else to really report about. So,
What's resubmitted mean?
means we got the request for additional information last month. We revised the plans, written out our responses for DEP, sent it over to Rolando at DEP just to give them an idea of what we're doing, so we didn't just submit and have to wait 30 days for another response. So we've dressed it up, and it's been resubmitted to DEP. So they're reviewing what we've put together in response to the questions that they had.
What is it that they want? I'm just curious what they want about this for the paving now, I'm assuming.
Correct. 33rd Street, we're extending the road about 40 feet, but in doing so, we're also trying to eliminate the stormwater accumulation problem down there. So we're putting in some shallow stormwater facilities, but anywhere you disturb the soil down there, that soil has to be spread seaward of the CCCL line. You can't export it unless it's unsuitable for the beach. Then you have to bring in the corresponding volume of soil that is suitable for the beach to spread that amongst the dune systems. So that has been the conversation. And one of the comments was also, since we were getting into the landward side of the dune system, we had to have a conversation with U.S. Fish and Wildlife about habitat impact and restoration. So you'll see some rope going up and some small signage for telling people to stay off the dunes. That's what came out of the conversation with Fish and Wildlife. Same thing on 23rd Street. We're doing a little bit of excavation for stormwater. So we've got to put that soil, or that sand, spread it over the dunes and plant it for the paving of that road. Since almost that entire road is seaward of the coastal construction control line. So.
All right. Any other questions?
Mention the canal. Are we going to pave the rest of the canal now that the building is done down there?
That's the plan, and we've got an application in for that one.
Oh, we have to get approval from?
Correct. Again, that's building seaward of the CCCL line.
Is that going to be any problem getting that approved?
No, we've got the request for information there that we're responding to. If you're familiar with what was done on 24th Street, where there was a small stormwater area put at the end of that road, the end of Canal will have a similar area like that.
So we're going to try to get all the paving done at the same time?
That would probably be the best way to do it.
Be the cheapest way to do it, wouldn't it?
Correct. So.
All right, any other questions for Jeff? Appreciate it. Okay, moving to, under our first reading, we have ordinance 692. Do I have a motion to read by title only?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any opposition? Please read.
Ordinance number 692, An ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mexico Beach, Florida, amending the appropriation of funds of the budget for the fiscal year 2017-2018 for the purpose of providing funds for the general fund and creating a fire fund and providing an effective date. We may not want to move forward with this ordinance as this is subject to the total amount of the assessment, and if we're looking at changing it, these are going to change.
Well, this is just the first reading. We're
Yeah.
gonna have that information. I mean, we're not gonna sit on what we just talked about earlier. We're gonna decide, I would think we would hear quickly.
Okay.
And
Then
if
we're
something happens between now and 30 days from now, we can always
Change it.
change it. Okay, that was the first reading of ordinance 692, and that was 693 is also for, both of these are fire.
693 is
All right, do I have a motion to read 693 by title only? Explain the difference, even though I read it.
692 is moving the fire stuff out of the general fund and
Right.
creating fire. 693 is all the budget stuff that we've done since October. The fish cleaning station's in there. The
That's what I was,
SCBA grant, the pier schematic, the dumpsters, the comp plan, that's all in that one.
in 693.
Yeah, 692 is just fire, 693 is the, everything else. Pier schematic
Well,
challenge.
then I guess my question is, does this complete the budget amendments
Yeah.
in its entirety?
693 does, yes.
Okay.
Thus
what
far,
had me-
thus
that's
far
what-
budget amendments. So far budget amendments for the.
Right, but to date? To date. Okay. Do I have a motion to read 693 by title only?
So moved.
Motion is second. Any opposition to reading? Please do so.
Ordinance 693, an ordinance of the City Council of the City of Mexico Beach, Florida, amending the appropriation of funds of the budget for the fiscal year 17-2018 for the purpose of providing funds for the general fund, fire fund, and sanitation fund, and providing an effective date.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on. City clerk, fire truck financing.
All right, the last meeting we talked about the fire truck purchase and financing, and the council wanted to see numbers in front of them, so I made a nice spreadsheet, I hope it's easy to read, that shows the numbers of what it would do. The bank was offering a loan at 3.66% for the first 5 years, and then it would go even with the Wall Street Journal pricing after that for the final 5 years. I just guessed that was going to be 4.95. I don't know what 5 years from now will look like for sure. And then I did a scenario doing self-financing, utilizing our general fund reserves. I did 5 different percentage rates, 2.5 all the way to 4.5. The fire department has budgeted $31,595 per year for debt payments, so we could go to 4.5% if we did it ourselves, and it would make the reserve fund $60,533 over the life of the loan,
Over 10 years,
over 10 years.
and we'd have half of the truck paid for in 5 years, and we'd have half of that loan paid back to the city in 5 years.
Yeah, and then on the bottom, it shows what a reserve balance would be if we did this, then the payment to the fire fund, what debt would be remaining from the fire truck, and then how long our reserves would last, about 2.94 months if we had a disaster in the beginning, and then it shows what it'll be at the end.
I think we should finance it from those funds. Everybody speak at once? I mean, I'd rather pay the city interest than pay the bank interest.
Bless you.
And the reason I went to 4.5 is CD rates have gone up so much in the last year. Who knows what's going to happen? So we might as well budget it out long-term to ourselves at a higher rate than shortchanging it.
we pay ourselves interest?
We wouldn't necessarily have to. I mean, we could just cash
Why
flow.
would we do that? Why wouldn't we just take it? I mean, that would just be more savings.
Same thing, yeah. It'd either be more savings or it'd be building a reserve fund, either way. If we pay ourselves interest, it brings the reserve fund up. If we don't, then it saves money on the fire assessment, we lower the assessment rate. Either way works.
Oh, we could lower the assessment rate.
Sure.
I think that makes sense.
Or it makes up for if we make any changes like we just discussed, because that money's gonna have to be made up too.
Because you'd have over a $3,000 savings a year if you didn't charge interest from the fire fund.
Well, the reason I say that, we don't make any money on our reserve fund now. I mean, we'd buy a CD.
We have one CD and the rest is sitting there collecting, just checking the account
Right,
interest.
but some of that is you just can't go invest all that money like you can if it was
Exactly.
your money or my money.
Yeah.
So.
You're getting
We're
0.2.
not doing any, that fund has not been growing. And to me, if anything we do to lower the assessment for the fire is much more advantageous for the citizens than it is to charge us interest, which ultimately means we keep the assessment the same. So I'm okay with borrowing the money. I'm not for charging interest
So just do it straight up.
and reduce the assessment. And we don't find ways that we need it. We lower the assessment by that much money. Just a minute. Now that's, I think that's the most prudent, for me. I like that.
Yeah, I like that. Makes sense.
That works, Jim?
Connie Reisinger, 504 Maryland. Maybe I don't remember. Did we discuss about available grants at all over something like this? This is a lot of money, people.
Yeah, AFG grants have been submitted for the last 3 years in a row, and we've been denied. Unfortunately, there's some rural communities that are just way harder up. That's a federal grant. So remember, we've gotten a lot of grant money, but when it comes to fire trucks, that's a federal grant. We continue to try every year, and hopefully the next truck won't have to be bought, but
The next truck?
Oh, yeah.
How many
fire trucks
are
don't
we
last
gonna be
forever.
buying?
Well, they're it's like anything else, just like police cars or city buildings. It's
So
an ongoing thing.
As if I understand this right, a fire truck goes by its age, not by mileage or anything like that.
That's correct.
And also, just for the record, the truck that we are looking at is really the more reasonable truck in terms of price of what they consider, I guess, a big fire. I mean, this is not a,
Yeah, it's a $250,000 truck versus a $500,000 truck. It's also re-chassisable. So let's say in 10 years it needs a new chassis. At today's market, that's $65,000. Now in 10 years, if it needs a new chassis, I don't know what that will be, but it'll
Right.
be significantly less. And that's the big plus of the truck we looked at, is that you could put
You
a
can
new
upgrade
chassis
it.
under it.
So is the average age like 10 years, so in 10 years we're gonna buy another one?
That is the NFPA recommendation. Hopefully we can do longer.
you know, you just, it's like any other insurance company or any insurance policy that you own. Do you need it? No, but you want it there when you do need it. So I don't know how you decide when you need to buy a truck or when you need to do what we're doing, but that's the direction that we've chosen to go. But in terms of the money spent for the vehicle, based on my limited knowledge of trucks, fire trucks, and what I read about the one we are getting, it seems to be the more common sense approach for the city. All right, so do we need, is this a motion and vote and that kind of thing? That's what we need to do on the truck part?
Yes, please.
Okay. All right. So to use the funds from the reserve, we certainly have to vote on that. I do have a question
I assume somebody's thought about, what happens if we need this money?
I mentioned this last time. For the first 5 years, that truck would be able to be financed against. After the second 5 years, it probably would not. And that's just, doing research with banks. That's not a for sure thing. But my understanding is it's like a car. That first 5 years, it could be borrowed against, but it's after that where it could be a challenge. And that's all I've found out.
All right, so what are we gonna pay the reserve fund back a year?
And if you just do without interest,
Yeah.
It'd be $25,000 a year.
How much?
25,000.
I don't see that on here.
it's not on there. I didn't do that scenario because I hadn't thought of it. It should be, what is the total purchase?
10 years, 248. I mean, it's
25,000.
just $100 shy of 25.
25,000 a year, starting 2019.
It should start
This year.
probably end of this budget cycle, because it's budgeted in the assessment we just did. So that would happen in September the 1st.
The first 25,000 would go back by September.
Yep.
And the total amount that we're gonna use,
250,000, 248.
432. The other question is, if you guys aren't opposed, the truck build time we're looking at November, I think there wasn't a big discount to prepay half up front, but there could be a benefit to getting the truck sooner if we prepay up front, because this company receives numerous truck orders from however many companies, and basically if we pay half up front, they may be able to speed up our build time. So if you guys are okay with that too, that's another option we have if it would get us the truck sooner than later, because we are down to just one vehicle, so we're on that. We're not in a good place right now, so the sooner we can get one, the better.
I don't have a problem with that. As long as we've got I want the motion to reflect the payment schedule back and the amount of money that we're taking. So that's all part of the record. And if you could tell us those numbers, somebody can make a motion to that effect. Help us with the motion and it involves the numbers.
I'm going to read what I have written, and it's missing two things, and that's two names. It says motion by blank and seconded by blank to self-fund the purchasing of a fire truck in the amount of $248,432, using the general fund reserves and paying back the loan at 0% interest at a payment rate of $25,000 per year.
That's about it.
Do we need to put anything in there about prepaying, Mr. Mayor?
No. No, don't need to do that. That's just an in-house decision.
Okay, just ask.
All right, did everybody, do we need to read it again, or does everybody understood? Okay, all right, then I'll chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Have a motion and a second. Discussion? Any questions? Any comments? Call the roll.
Mr. McLaughlin?
Yes.
Ms. Albrecht?
Yes.
Mayor Kathy?
Yes.
Mr. Wallace?
Yes.
Mr. Putnam?
Yes.
Okay. Good deal, good deal.
Okay. Where are we? Economic development, Mr. Mayor.
I've got a lot of items in this PowerPoint. It's going to seem like we're going to be bouncing around a lot of different items, but hopefully at the end we'll have it all come together. So whenever economic development is mentioned in Mexico Beach, I think arms go up and people get alarmed, because the implication of that is we're going to become a mini Panama City Beach. No question. No one who lives here wants to become a mini Panama City Beach. We want to be who we are, and we want to remain that way just as long as it's possible. But one of the questions that we get asked all the time is that we have the highest tax rate in the county. And I put in there, and we always will. Bottom line is, every dollar that Mexico Beach receives in revenue, there's a demand for that dollar for services. Residential properties demand well over $1 for their services they require. Business and manufacturing properties demand less than $1 for their services they require. So what that means, because we are dominant in our residential properties, that's just a fact of life, that our tax rates are going to be higher. Why is economic development important? I'm not going to read all of these, but without question, the easiest ones are increase the tax base. Economic diversification. You know, we've got all of our eggs in the tourism basket. It's not a bad thing, but if for some reason that goes away, we've got very little left. So by doing some economic development, we become more self-sufficient. We get a lot of our property used productively. What does the plan accomplish? It gives an overview of the economy, provides policy direction for economic growth, and identifies strategies, programs to improve the economy. If we don't have a plan, then we're reactive to development, where we are going to accept most anything a developer can get approved. A developer might try something approved that doesn't fit the community. Is the community ready for a plan? Is there an attitude underlying in Mexico Beach for or against one of those plans? If we did do that, who would be the endorsements? Who would be the leadership? Who would do the analytical capabilities that has to be done? One thing I've learned in trying to get the Triumph the Gulf Coast application in, we don't have a lot of money in Mexico Beach, and we got to help ourselves somehow. And there's this underlying common theme in Mexico Beach that nobody helps us. We're in the part of the county where nobody cares about us and all. But as I've gone through the minutes over time, there's a recurring theme of Bay County in particular helping Mexico Beach year after year. So it's not like they're ignoring us. Another example is when Mexico Beach had the opportunity to enact an extra sales tax like Panama City Beach has, we decided not to do it. That would have given us an opportunity to have our visitors picking up some of our share of the expenses. So what can we do to further economic development? Do a plan, attract more businesses, review impact fees, and develop a CRA, which is Community Redevelopment Agency. Gulf Power services most of Bay County. Of course, as you know, Gulf Power does not service Mexico Beach. We are Duke. But whenever I go to my meetings with Bay County cohorts in similar positions as mine, they talk about Gulf Power a lot. Gulf Power has teamed up with NextSite to provide some services to Bay County. We're going to do things like market analysis, target retail, do some proactive marketing, and then see what the results are. Your first question will be, if Mexico Beach were to sign up for this, what would we expect, and what would the cost be? Well, as you can see at the bottom, though it's kind of in small font, it says that under 5,000 in population, it's $2,500 per year, and it's a 3-year commitment. At $7,500 over a 3-year period. The Bay County Chamber, however, said that they will provide, in the first of the 3 years, they will provide for 50% of that. In the second year, 30%, and in the third year, 10%. So bottom line, of the $7,500 we would spend, the chamber would be on the hook for $2,250, and we would be on the hook for $5,250. These are the type of things that NextSite would do. They would do some detailed demographics, get a feel for who we are. They would do some research about what we would expect. They would do some nifty mapping, and of course, marketing. The research they would do, they have the ability to get more detail with the census figures. They got business location data. They look at the consumer spending that we have here. They look at what potential retail we could get. and look at certain profiles. And the thing that interested me most was the mobile data analysis. They have a way of partnering with the cell phone carriers that when people are in Mexico Beach, they know the area code from the people who were here. So you know exactly where people are from when they're here. Now you could make it easy and say, well, I know who's here, it's Georgia. You know, why even bother? But, you know, we have a lot of people from Tennessee. The CDC's been marketing to South Carolina, things like that. So it's not just Georgia, that is the predominant state. And of course, there are items that work against that, as, you know, for people like Adrian, who is a full-time resident next door, still has his home Minnesota area code. So he would throw things way off, as he does with most everything. We love you, Adrian.
Speak for yourself.
But you're the local phone number, right?
One of the things that is beneficial in their analysis is something called a retail gap or a leakage summary. In other words, if you want to buy a car in Mexico Beach, you got to go somewhere else. If you want to buy a computer in Mexico Beach, you got to go somewhere else. So these people have the ability to come up with how much money we as Mexico Beach residents spend on items in other communities. And so what that does may seem like a silly thing to find out, but what that could do, that could let our current businesses know how much money is leaving the area because they have to. And if there was an item in that analysis that a local business person could provide, then by all means that would give them the tools to say, you know, if I wanted to expand my business or do something a little different, you know, this analysis here says that I could probably make a go of it. So that'd be a very worthwhile thing to figure out. And of course, then you've got the marketing aspect of this particular thing. The retail networking. I know we're never going to have a large strip mall in Mexico Beach. We're not going to have Tuesday morning or Kohl's come to town. It's just never going to happen. But there are some small retails out there that I'm sure might be interested in coming to Mexico Beach. I don't know that, but that's what this would let us know. And of course, something that's always important is the consumer attitude and behavior analysis. That gives us a feel for what we want here to Mexico Beach. It goes through the lifestyles of what we have here and what kind of retail could fit this particular market. They'll provide mapping where this is of course, it's got to be Georgia like everything else, but there's a major retail aerial photo of what retail is in Dublin, Georgia. They'll do one for Mexico Beach. It won't be as extensive as this, of course, but it will have what we got on there. They will target retailers. They go to certain conferences and that sort of thing where they have on a first name basis with a lot of these retailers. If we leave that, then we go to looking at impact fees. And I will defer that conversation to Adrian because he spoke with someone recently that knows what they're talking about when it comes to impact fees.
Before we move there, could I ask just a quick question? One of the areas you were talking about is basically where money is spent, in other words, other communities. Just curious, does that include the ability to determine how much money is electronically spent? In other words, the eBays, the Amazons, and so forth, because that is getting a lot of impact into our lives today. I just wonder if they are tracking that in any way.
I don't know enough to say yes or no, but it's something that would be a consideration when you look at it. Your show, sir.
All right. Last Friday, I called a company that did our old impact fee study and also just did Panama City Beach's impact fee study on increasing their rate. we had a discussion about what would it cost, how do you determine the rates, and is this something you recommend for our city? I can give you the study cost right off the bat, and it was $30,000. He asked a series of questions related to, has the city grown as it did in the projected impact fee study that was done before? And we were projected to have over 1,500 people by the year 2009, and we are currently at just over 1,200, so we did not meet those numbers. We talked about the fire assessment that happened and getting a increase on our fire impact fees, and he cautioned against doing that as we are assessing vacant land, so once they develop, they've already paid essentially an impact fee. So he did not think it was beneficial to us. His recommendation at the end was, at this time, as we have not annexed anything further, he doesn't know if we'd see the return on $30,000. We may actually see a decrease in our impact fees, as it depends on what was accomplished in our capital improvement plan from before versus now. So at this time, I don't think it's probably the best way for us to go, but it is always an option that we do a study, because this one was done in '05.
Any questions about impact fees? Then we'll move on to the Community Redevelopment Agency. Bottom line, the best way or method they get their money to do things in the community is through tax increment financing. In essence, what that is where you designate a particular area and you take the increased taxes from the base year and plow that money back into that area. And here's how that works. I took a random property on South 30th Street. In year number 1 of a 20-year plan, the building value was $54,000, the land value $165,000, and the market value and taxable value are the same because it's not homesteaded. So you take that $219,000, divide it by 1,000 to get the $219.96, multiply it by the overall tax rate to come up with $3,639 they pay in annual taxes. And of course, as you see, the Bay County Schools gets the lion's share of things. We come in second, and Bay County's right behind us on third place. Let's say during that year, they decide to tear down that old home and build a new one. Let's say it's worth $154,000. So you have a $100,000 increase in the market and taxable value of the property. If you do the math, what they'll pay in taxes the next year is $5,293.96. That is a difference of roughly $1,600. And that is the $1,600 is what goes into the Community Redevelopment Agency to be used for improvements in that area. Over a 19-year period, that would collect an extra $31,000. Now keep in mind, all the entities up on the top box will always get, during that 20-year period, always get that amount of taxes. But it's the increased amount as properties are improved that has a bearing on what goes into the CRA. Things we have to consider. We have to get the buy-in of the Bay County Schools and Bay County. If they say proceed, we can then collect that money called the increment. If they say no, we are faced with something that we can do called a home rule CRA, which means we will only be able to consider our own taxes that we generate to the city. So in this case, it would be $518 in that next year and every year thereafter until you come up with $9,849. You can see the big difference in those two figures. So to make this work, it's pretty important that we get the buy-in from the schools in the county. There are 6 CRAs in the county. Panama City has 4, Lynn Haven has 1, Panama City Beach has 1, so it's not like it's foreign to Bay County. But what we have to do to start this, we have to have a document prepared that says there are certain conditions that exist, and in essence, it's called a finding of necessity. the document that then proves the need of this particular thing. You have to prove that there's inadequate structures, shortage of affordable housing, inadequate infrastructure, insufficient roadways, inadequate parking, and things of that sort. You can do things such as add parks. You can do things, in our case, we could consider partial funding for the pier because it would improve that neighborhood and Mexico Beach in general. If we're able to establish this, there's a 5 to 7 member board that either could be the 5 of you, or it could be others in the community, or a mix of the two. The CRA is responsible for developing a plan to address the needs of the targeted area. The negatives, as we pointed out, though, is that one of the driving principles that allow us to increase our services to the public is that as we get our increased valuations each year from homes that are built, homes that are improved, we're able to either glean that extra tax money to provide more services or to maybe lower the millage rate. If you have a CRA that covers a good bit of the city, then we'll always be frozen in year one and wouldn't be able to collect that in future years. That's about the only negative that I can see. So that all being said, when it comes to the funding of the pier in particular, we're asking the Triumph Gulf Coast people for half of the $7.4 million. That leaves $3.7 million we got to find on our own. We've got a initial fund started of $300,000. We have a commitment from the CDC for an unnamed amount, but they will help some financial contributions in the future, but it's undetermined as to what that is at this point. So we've got to start, but we need more ways to get money for that pier. We tried the appropriation route with the state, and the state wasn't very in a very giving mood this year. They didn't really give out a lot, so we missed out on that. We have a lot of agencies looking out for us. I spoke with Elizabeth Moore, who was contacted by commissioners from the county and saying, whatever you do, try to find money for Mexico Beach's pier. I know Dewberry is working as well, trying to find money. We've got an opportunity to have a meeting with some DEP people here in the next few weeks. The time and date hadn't been set yet. We're trying to get them down, buy them lunch, show them the pier, physically take them out to the pier to let them see that our current pier is not exactly straight. It's kind of serpentine at best. Kind of see some of the areas of need. So we're trying our best to get money for that pier, but it may be 2 or 3 years before we get enough funding to get it done. Any questions on the CRA?
Basically, with a CRA, if we went that route, we wouldn't have any way to cover increased costs in the city, in essence, for the next 19 years, because the increased income would go for the CRA. Is that right?
What you said is partially right, but that's only for the area that is designated as a CRA. It's not the intent to have the whole city designated as a CRA. That would be difficult to sell. We would have to designate a certain area for that. In other words, maybe around the canal, maybe around the pier, things of that sort. But you couldn't designate the whole city as a CRA.
Well, first, thank you for the presentation. Second, we've got to do something to capture some money that is leaving the city in a form that we don't ever get our hands, I mean, we can go to the county, and we've done this for years, and say, hey, can you help us? We got this project, and they help us. To a degree that, I guess it's whatever they deem is appropriate. And I'm very appreciative of that, because I have been part of going to the county and asking for funding, and they have been receptive to helping us. But as we move forward, I think we've got to look at a way to take care of ourselves. And as long as we are who we are and want to be who we are, if we're going to send, just in that one example, over $1,000 to the county on that one house, we're never going to recoup any reasonable percentage of that $1,000 off of that one house back to this city from the county. And I don't want that to be interpreted that they don't help us. But we've got to, I think it's important to look at, of what you presented, the CRA has the most benefit, direct benefit to me, to us having funds for whatever project that we are going to do in this city. And everything that we're most likely going to do is going to be on the south side of the road, because that's where the most economic value is. That's the highest taxes, the most, the things that are going to increase more rapidly, value-wise.
One thing I did do, I did speak with the Government Services. That's the group from Sandy
Yeah.
that helped us with the fire assessment. I spoke with the CEO of her company as well as her, because I told them that, you know, we're considering something, but keep in mind that we just had a fire assessment, so any future assessments, it's probably not a good thing to bring up, but at least it needs to be looked at as to what, you know, the overall package could help us with. So we let them know that we had a need to fund the pier, we had a need to look at a CRA, and we had the need to look at some stormwater help, and sometimes the CRA could help with that. So I asked them to give me some ballpark figure as to what they could do to help us with this. And so they sent me yesterday afternoon a proposal just by email that said they would like to conduct a funding study for the city that will focus on the following. Number one, develop an inventory of funding sources for the revitalization of Mexico Beach, to include revenue sources for funding the pier replacement, including TIF, special assessments, impact fees, special grants or appropriations. Quantify where possible the amount of revenue generated by each revenue source, the hurdles, steps, and potential costs necessary to implement each revenue program. Identify other capital needs for Mexico Beach and provide a menu of funding options for areas such as parks and recreation, roads, and stormwater. And all that was sounding pretty good till I got to the last paragraph. They would do this for a fixed fee of $22,500. And, you know, for Panama City, that's probably not a whole lot of money, but for Mexico Beach, it certainly is. And I would have a hard time trying to scare up the money for that. That's not budgeted for this year and that sort of thing. So I think it's pretty much up to us to decide which direction we want to go.
In line with the study, curious, you had mentioned earlier pairing up with the other organization that would be through Gulf Power, I think it was, it cost $7,500 over 3 years. When do you need to know if we would join into that?
Well, I wanted to gauge your interest in that today because I think if there is some consensus to move forward on that, I can get that cooking right away.
It's a lot cheaper, and I'm wondering if, I'll use Jerry, you always we say the CDC could fund, I wonder if they could fund part of it, because the information would also help them.
Well, we can always ask the CDC for whatever we want to ask them for, but in my opinion, their mission is for heads in beds, and this really isn't a heads in beds exercise. It's more of a economic development, and that's not what they do, economic development.
Well, the one side that would help them, I think, would be the telephone area codes, you know, that we would get through that report. They may get it from other places now, I don't know. But knowing where people are coming from would probably help them maybe better spend their money on advertising, I'm not sure. That was the thing.
Well, even if we decide to go that direction, you know, after the Bay County Chamber pays their percentage, we're only talking about $1,700 a year for 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really
Not much.
immaterial. So, any thoughts on whether we should pursue that or not?
I think it would be good information for a relatively inexpensive price from my point of view.
I don't see any value in that. It sounds good, and it'll probably look nice on paper, but for us, I don't see any value in it. What I would be interested in doing is finding out how the county and the school felt about us doing the CRA. Because without them, there's no value.
Right.
And I don't know if when it's appropriate to broach that with them. I don't know if we're just like a letter that says, hey, we're entertaining the CRA, what's your thoughts, or do you go to them and say a little more, a little more hard line? I don't know the answer to that.
Well, it just so happens that 7:30 Thursday morning is our monthly meeting with my peers across the county, and the county manager will be there. And I can ask that question to kind of get a feel for what he thinks about opposition or positive.
I'd like to plant that seed. I'd like to see, Lynn Haven got turned down. I don't know what Lynn Haven was trying to do, but I saw that was a source of contention with their local Lynn Haven government. I don't say turned down, but I think they only would agree like 50% or something like that. I don't remember the detail, and I don't know any background there. We've been awful good in Bay County, and I think and when I say that, our contribution to the county is at a good level. Also wouldn't mind if we planted that seed and asked them maybe they would like to make a contribution to a pier. I don't mean just a couple $100,000. I'm talking about a significant amount of money. That's a lot of work for a CRA for our community. I mean, that's a lot of nuts and bolts involved in doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And if our ultimate goal is to try to find ways to finance projects, I don't mean just the pier. I'm talking about whatever else, and there'll be others. So I'd like to plant seed to the county. I'd like to let Mel sort of spread that word, see what feedback we get.
I can call Mr. Husfeld for the school as well and kind of get his,
Yeah.
He'll tell me.
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure.
Another item that would be appropriate, I think, for some of the uses of this money, stormwater, when all these homes were built south of 98 years ago, they didn't really take into account stormwater. We have a lot of instances where homes have an elevation lower than the street, and so all the water comes off onto them, or either around them, sometimes through them. When we designed 24th Street, or when Dewberry designed 24th Street, the way they did that is they kind of made it, in essence, a V, shall we say. And so the middle of the road was the lowest point, so the water is funneled towards the stormwater holding facility between the beach and the road. that would go a long way, I think, of helping a lot of other streets in that neck of the woods, if we were able to have the money to finally, make some major renovations to those. So that's another use for that, so that would be very appropriate.
Right.
Well, I agree with, go to the county and see what they can do, but I also don't think that this would be a bad idea, going with the economic development for 1,700. Yes, we're always watching our money, but if that can help us in the future, might not help us right today or next year, but the information can help us with the future. I think, because my feeling is if we don't do things to grow, and I don't mean to become a Panama City Beach by any means, if we don't improve Mexico Beach where people want to come, eventually, in years to come, and I'm not saying 5-10 years, it's going to die. So we always have to help it to grow. And if that would give us some ideas or whatever, I think it would be a good idea.
Any other thoughts on that? On the next site with Gulf Power? Right now, it's 2-1.
Well, why don't we do the county thing for sure?
Okay.
County and school. And all that's gonna do is give us maybe a little better direction on something we might wanna look at.
Okay.
That fair? I mean, for right now, that's just, that doesn't cost us anything, it's a conversation. And while it's not something we might not can count on, at least we get a feel for how that might go. And that might lead us in another direction that we would spend money on. Fair enough? Is that good enough with everybody?
All right.
All right, thank you again for the presentation. Miscellaneous.
I'll just bring up one thing, I have had a phone call. We tabled what we were going to do as far as accessory buildings. I just wonder where we want to go with it, or do we want to go with it? Leave it there.
What do you think?
I think we need to look at it at some point, how, what, or why, I'm not sure. We have buildings out there that are accessories, that are being used. I have no desire for promoting rentals, but we have the buildings in place, and we have people who have purchased buildings from real estate people with the knowledge that they can use them, and then to find out that they can't use them in the way they expected. When, how, what we would do, I don't have any, it's a big area. I think we need to look at it somewhere down the line, some way.
I think we have to make a decision, and I mentioned it a couple meetings ago. I don't have any problem with, if we want to tighten up or make it clearer, but I do think that those that are in existence should be grandfathered in. I keep going back to the couple who recently bought with the understanding from the realtor that you could use this as an accessory, and now you can't. So I'm thinking that, have them grandfathered in, period.
You got a hand back there.
Pardon me?
Just a moment.
Sure.
Probably the only reason I would agree with that is that the situation hasn't been enforced at all.
Right.
Not at all. And I mentioned the fact that I wound up with a situation similar to this in my house, which when I built the place, it was approved for occupancy, the house, and including I had a shop, I had a art studio like thing, and wound up putting a bed out there, because I wanted to know how to make a Murphy bed for one thing, and did it, mostly for my grandkids, which we have 10. And so when they all show up, it's a crowd. But it's not what I'm using it for, it's the fact that it's there makes it illegal. And so we've got to address that. I don't have any problem because we had a lack of enforcement for years to okay the ones in existence, but we need to write it in such a way that my 15-year-old or my 10-year-old can understand it. So it doesn't take a lawyer to tell you what's going on. It needs to be real plain and simple. And
Excuse me,
Just a second.
but
You're going to get, just a second.
Law.
Just a second, you're out of order. Okay, now you understand you're out of order, so just, when you recognize, you'll have your time. Okay, thank you.
I'll shut up.
You don't let you shut up. Rex, you got any comment?
Well, we have to address it. I don't think we can just leave it alone. I mean, it deserves an answer.
Okay. Well, under miscellaneous today is not, I mean, it's okay to talk about it, but if you want to make an agenda item out of it and then make it, then that's fine. You may come forward.
Thank you.
Dave Castro, 408 7th Street. First off, you're violating the sunshine law when you bring something as critical as this. It's been hanging over my head for 9 months, and you discuss how you're going to accept it or whether you're not going to accept it. You really shouldn't be doing that. You can talk about setting up a workshop, you put it on the agenda, you give people a chance to complain about it, to vote for it, to give you their input. But to say that you're already making decisions about whether or not you should do it, that's a violation of sunshine law.
Okay.
I would like to see it go on the agenda. I do think we need to.
Well, that's your option to do that, or any of us. So
All right.
that's, I want to just make a statement, because you've mentioned it several times about your personal situation. An apartment that is set up as an apartment, whether it's rented or not rented, if that's the primary use of the accessory, that's a violation. If you have an art studio or if you have a workshop that has a day bed in it, but the primary use of it is a workshop, that's a big difference. I mean, when you throw a cast net over everything as if the only function of it is to be an apartment, that's a huge difference than what you're describing that you have. I just want to make sure that, I mean, there's, all right, that's all, that was my only comment. So, moving on. Now, any other comments on, I mean, somebody's gonna put that on the agenda, and we've seen what we've been given from, the other sources that were, so all of that information is available. All right, the chief obviously had to leave. Is there anything of anybody, Mayor, you have any?
Nothing on behalf of the chief.
Okay, same with, Chief Simmons.
Correct.
Mr. Hall,
Yes, sir.
I saw you
My
stayed
turn.
awake the whole time.
Yes, sir. Just a few things, if I could, real quick. Just want to update the council. We should be finished with the pavilion at the canal end of day today. It'll be open to the public for them to do, enjoy, and really utilize it. And we've had a lot of great comments about it, so they're excited to have it there. Last week we had a couple days that we were out at the end of the pier wrestling with some damaged piling, or not pilings, but timbers. We've got them stabilized, so to speak, and if the weather will ever lay down, we'll get out there with the push boat and try to come up with a fix. But the T is currently open, pier is currently open, nothing's closed down. if it gets bumpy again, we'll have to close it down, but right now it's open. With us finishing up the pavilion at the canal, once that's done, we'll focus on the fish cleaning stations. We'll jump back over there. We've got all of our signs in and all that good stuff. We'll jump over there, get that one finished, hopefully fairly soon, and have that open. The one thing that I do want to talk to you guys about, though, is dumpsters. You guys approved the money for us at the last council meeting to buy dumpsters. While during my research, they don't last long around here. Bad environment, still, you know, the two just don't mix. So as I was messing around, looking, getting prices and whatnot, I came across a polyurethane dumpster. Same size, waiting on some specs as far as what they can handle as far as capacity goes and prices. But I'm hoping that they'll be comparable, and instead of getting 3 years out of a metal dumpster, maybe we can get 8 years out of a polyurethane dumpster. Extend the life of our dumpster, because they're very expensive, and 3 years, you're just not getting anything out of it. You know, we've tried different ways to extend the lives with using two-part epoxies and stuff like that, you know, coating the inside of our dumpsters and whatnot, but that didn't work either. But just trying to figure out ways, trying to think outside the box, try to figure out a way to save money, plus extend the life of what we do have. Because if it's one thing I've learned, it may not be there tomorrow. So, but that's all I got. Oh, the other thing is we're up to our eyeballs in new installs, water meters, irrigation meters. We got a big sewer tap we got to do over there off of Robin and George right there on the corner. So just to the public, to the council, you know, we're doing our best to whittle that list down, but you know, we'll get to whoever it is that's waiting in line, but we'll get to you.
All right, any questions for Public Works? Okay, thank you, Philip, appreciate it. Mr. Clark?
Only update I have is the fire assessment is just shy of a third collected at $208,000 as of yesterday. So it's coming in, and calls are slowing down. But other than that, everything's moving forward.
Okay. You don't have and I guess you do that at our next meeting when you give us our financial updates? Okay. Any questions for the clerk? Anybody? Mel?
Thank you, Your Honor. Just two things this morning. Number one, I had put on Facebook on Friday some pictures of the pavilion as well as the fish cleaning station to let people know that we're nearly complete with both those projects, and we did have a lot of positive comments from people. A lot of people are so thankful that the pavilion is back at the canal. And, you know, Philip said by the end of the day it will be complete. I think it's appropriate that should be complete. I know things do get changed. If there's a water leak or something, you got to do what you got to do. We understand that. But when he gives me the green light that it's ready to go, I'll put another posting on Facebook to let people know it's open for business. Come down at your convenience. But there's a couple of people we have to thank. No question, the city did install the concrete pad. We did install the poles for the structure. But the rest of it was financed not by the city, but by a couple of other people in the community. And I think it's appropriate to thank those people. I will send a letter of thank you to both individuals in this next week. But they need to be recognized. And one name is Bill Mulligan from the Mexico Beach Marina, and the other is Lee Cathy from Ace Hardware. You know, those gentlemen single-handedly financed, well, maybe single-handedly if they got money from someone else, I'm not aware of it, but predominantly those two were the ones that stepped forward and paid for that whole structure. So when you see them, thank them, and I will send a letter on behalf of the city later this week. We did have our Employee of the Quarter luncheon last week. During the course of the Employee of the Quarter, we do mention the winner. And this particular winner has told us in the past he did not want to be recognized because he feels other people should get the recognition and not him. But every quarter that we get our heads together for nominations and the final vote, his name is always there, and we always say, well, he said he didn't want it. And we just went against his wishes, and we figured he had to get it at least once, because you get an extra day off, you get $100 to spend wherever you want.
Stop me.
We're gonna put a sign up. I can tell you, that's, we got to do better than that.
But the winner is Tommy Davis, and you see him all over the place doing special projects. And, you know, Tommy's the epitome of someone who represents the city well. I was lucky enough to be a judge at the Gumbo Festival, and I had to leave shortly after because I had some other commitments. But, you know, he was out there enjoying the day, but he was also there on behalf of the city. Whenever there was somebody that needed something, he was there. His personal cell phone number was given to Wiley Petty, you know, who was in charge of the whole thing, that if you need something, call this number. And he was there for a number of hours. He had a good time. And he also was working, even though he didn't get paid for it. So we felt it was very appropriate that he get that honor.
Fantastic.
That's all I have, sir.
Thank you.
So, he was at the Gumbo Cookout as a volunteer, or did, I have to go back and check, did CDC pay him, the city didn't pay him?
Tommy was there on his own accord.
He was there because he
Oh
wanted to
my
be there.
goodness gracious.
That's what he told me.
I mean, I know he was around all the time, I assumed he was getting paid. Thank you, Tommy.
Yes.
You deserve this more than once.
Thank you. Only thing I have, if you would, starting on the minutes, or on the agenda, please check your cell phones. Put that on there at the top. Okay? Just a reminder to everybody to do
And
that.
then every time you start the meeting, you say, please, just like they do in church.
That's right.
sometimes,
They
please
turn-
turn-
that's right.
Please turn off your cell
Cell phone.
phones.
There you go. All right, is there a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Thank everyone for coming.
I don't know who made that motion.